The video going, so the video's going now. All right. So online we got Chris and Linda. Gail is having problems with her stuff. She needs to get a new iPad. But anyway, so that's who we have online. In person, we got Audrey and Kate. Yep, we got Karen, we got Craig, we got Pauline, the master baker there. We got Arlene back from her travels. We got Steve, we got Joe back from the being dead there. And, yeah, being so sick and everything. We got Anna and we got Joan. All right. There we go. So now everybody knows everybody else is here. So with that, Joe, could you open us up in a word of prayer, please? Oh, sure, you're eating. Okay. Arlene, since you're eating too. Everybody's going to their mouth eating.
We're all eating. It's your turn.
Are you almost ready there, Joe?
Almost, give me a minute.
Ready there? Okay, drink that Dunkin' Donuts coffee, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Your mic is on.
Whose mic's on? Is mine on?
Yep, go ahead.
Father, thank you for a beautiful sunny day today. Thank you for the blessings of life on this earth. The way you bless us and keep us safe. I ask you to speak through Jeff tonight and open our hearts to your word and help us to grow in you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay. So, tonight we do Nahum and Zephaniah. Okay, are there any questions about any of the other minor prophets we've talked about so far? Any other things that have popped in your brain or anything while you're looking at it? Okay, well, Nahum and Zephaniah, this is now marked. If that original handout that I gave you the very first time, that has a little timeline sheet with all the prophets and everything. That particular one, if you notice now, what happened is we have now entered a new stage. Israel is gone. Assyria has destroyed them. So now all these rest of these minor prophets we're talking about are occurring after the fall of Israel to Assyria. And that's where we're picking up. And with Nahum here, the interesting thing with Nahum is this is approximately 100 years after Jonah. And Nahum's prophecy deals with the same place that Jonah's prophecy dealt with. Jonah, remember, prophesied to Nineveh? Well, guess what? That's what Nahum's going to be doing. Okay, so he's prophesying also to Nineveh, but this time now, Nineveh is different. It's covering the entire Assyrian Empire. Now, so we're sitting around 660 BC. Israel fell around 720, 730 BC. So it's quite a few years afterwards. You know, and that's one thing we lose when we read the Bible is we don't have a good sense of the passage of time.
You sound like Kamala.
Oh, God.
Sound like what?
Sorry, I couldn't help that.
The passage of time by the world's word salad queen. Kamala Harris had said that. The passage of time. We have time, and then it passes.
And with the significance of the passage of
And
time.
the being unlearned.
Like what has been.
Well, thank you for, comparing me to that, but, thank you.
I'm
That's
very sorry. I'm
But what
sorry.
we don't fully appreciate it, that basically what we're talking about since Israel fell now, what we're talking about is that, think about, let's see, so from 720 there's 660, it would be about 80 years. Because you're going backwards to 0 when you're in the BC area. So if you think about 80 years now, think what 80 years ago would be to you right now. Except for Pauline and Arlene, it's older than the rest of us.
You two are dismissed.
I can't help that.
But gee golly whiz, even Pauline would have only been 12 years old then, right?
What day?
80 years ago.
Yes.
You'd be about
11
12
years,
years
11.
old. Yeah,
I was born in 33.
there you go.
Mhm.
And so you gotta have that appreciation of how much time is elapsing during all of this to kind of keep things in historical context. Okay, when Jonah, 100 years before this, was prophesying to Nineveh, it was the capital of the kingdom of Arm. Arm fell to the Assyrians, and now it's one of the major cities of the Assyrian Empire. So it's like a whole different empire. And they've beaten Israel and everything. And this whole purpose of this is the Assyrians are applying pressure upon Jerusalem, upon Judah. And remember King Hezekiah in Judah? And what happens during Hezekiah's reign? Anyone remember what happens during Hezekiah's reign? Bit of Bible trivia for yourself. The Assyrians surround Jerusalem, lay siege to it, and then what happens? Miraculously, they ain't there anymore. And they retreat. They run away, they disappear, and all of a sudden everything's okay. And so this prophecy is against Assyria and what's going to be happening to them, the judgment that's coming upon them. And they do have a judgment that happens historically. Babylon rises up as an empire and defeats and destroys Assyria first. And it is also one that brings comfort to Judah. Because in the midst of trials, in the midst of these tribulations, when everything seems to be going, wrong, it's easy to think, gee, God has abandoned us. We're all alone. And this is a prophecy that kind of seeks to bring comfort. So let's take a look at this. If we could, at chapter 1, Nahum chapter 1. Everyone's taking a quick bite of their cake. So Nahum chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Would someone just read 1 through 5?
A prophecy concerning Nineveh, book of the vision of Nahum the Elkoshite. The Lord's anger against Nineveh. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord takes vengeance and is filled with wrath. The Lord takes vengeance on his foes and vents his wrath against his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger, great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. His way is in the whirlwind of the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the sea and dries it up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before him, and the hills melt away. The earth trembles at his presence, and the world and all who live in it.
Okay, so we got a few pieces in there that are important. First, the word jealous. When you think of the word, without looking at the sheet, when you think of the word jealous, what do you think of?
Envy.
Envy. Yeah, jealous is one of these words that meant something different a long time ago, and its meaning has changed over time. For us, to be jealous is a very negative connotation. But as early as like 400 years ago, during the times of the Puritans, to be jealous meant that you were zealous to protect what was right.
Yeah, how's that change?
Well, lots of words change. Take a look at the word gay.
Wow.
It used to mean happy, just back in the 1920s, 1930s, 40s, 50s even. It meant to be happy. And it's changed now to mean something totally different. And that happens with language. We have words that change, and the word jealous was not a negative word. It was actually a religious word, a spiritual word, meaning that you were zealous to protect what was right. And so when they talk about God being a jealous God, it means that God is zealous to protect what is right in the world. Not that he is envious of these fake gods or anything like that. When he says he's jealous over, the other gods and stuff like that, it's not that he thinks, he's trying to protect what was right, and that we're supposed to worship him, not these other gods. Does that make sense? So that's a big word. The idea of vengeance just means to have justice. That a severe wrong was done, so now you're seeking justice. Again, today, vengeance seems to have a more negative connotation.
It has the same meaning.
It does, but sometimes people are seeking vengeance, and it has a negative connotation of it's not within the realm of justice, it's outside, it's kind of the person acting on their own, seeking to do things. And here, though, it's within the realm of justice. And so in ancient times, they would use the word vengeance just to talk about, like, if it was an action that law enforcement was doing, they are doing vengeance. They're seeking justice. And the idea of wrath, that's a big one. We think of wrath again in the negative sense. But this is, and I love this, the literal meaning of wrath in ancient Hebrew was keeping the garden pure. So imagine that you're tending your garden and someone says, "Oh, look at her, full of wrath."
So in Bibles that have a newer translation, they would not have these words.
They might change them around to make them sound more like an English word, yeah. But you see, this is one of the problems that occur with translation is they say, well, we'll still keep it jealousy, and even though it totally means something different.
Right,
And you have to understand that word has changed. And that's one of the really difficult things about reading and studying the Bible is making sure you're reading it in the context of the time that it was written and not in our own context. because things can totally mean something different. And notice Nahum uses the same phrase that was used in Jonah, the slow to anger, that God's slow to anger and great in power. And this is kind of expressing, he just has these slight modifications to it, because Jonah talks about God's mercy and has that phrase in it. Nahum adds it, has in the great in power part. And so that kind of shows this completeness of God's justice that is going on. In the Jewish faith, Nahum and Jonah are right next to each other. We, in the English Bible, we got things in a totally different order than the Jewish Bible. And the reason being is because we kind of try to put them more in what they thought was chronological order of the minor prophets. And so, but since then we've kind of changed the chronology a little bit, and there's big disputes over that, but that's what gave our order to the minor prophets. Versus the Jews were putting more subject-wise together. And so Nahum and Jonah are really kind of bookends together because they're both talking the same thing. Here God's showing mercy to Nineveh, but now the justice becomes complete. And here the vengeance is going to happen. Okay? So, and notice the kind of the great description. The whirlwind and the storm, the clouds are dust of his feet, rebuking the sea, drying up rivers, mountains quaking, hills mountain, the earth heaving. All of this is description of the justice coming, but it is figurative language. The mountains are not literally quaking. Okay, now some even, and just to lay this out even more, where it says he rebukes the sea and makes it dry, and he dries up all the rivers. In Hebrew, you hear a lot of symbolism with the land and the sea. Does anyone know what the difference is with the land and the sea?
Jews and Gentiles.
Yeah, the Jews and the Gentiles. Jews are the land. The sea is all the Gentiles. And so a lot of times when it's talking about the sea drying up, or the sea, in other words, those Gentiles are going to get theirs. God's going after them. Okay, so then we now go from there, and let's jump down to verse 9. And would someone read 9 through 15?
Whatever they plot against the Lord, he will bring to an end. Trouble will not come a second time. They will be entangled among thorns and drunk from their wine. They will be consumed like dry stubble. From you, Nineveh, has one come forth who plots evil against the Lord and desires wicked plans. This is what the Lord says. Although they have and are murmurers, they will be destroyed and pass away. Although he has afflicted you, Judith, I will afflict you no more. Now I will break their yoke from your neck and tear your shackles away. The Lord has given a command concerning you, Nineveh. You will have no descendants to bear your name. I will destroy the image and idols. They are in the temple of your gods. I will prepare for your grave for you are vile. Look there on the mountains, the feet of one who brings good news to proclaim peace. Celebrate your festivals, Judah, and fulfill your woes. No more will the wicked invade you. They will be completely destroyed.
Okay, thank you. So here, Nineveh, you know, it's laying out, okay, what's Nineveh doing? Well, they're plotting all this evil. They're just kind of like the perfect wickedness. And so because of that, then, what's gonna happen is Nineveh's gonna be completely destroyed. And Nineveh is not just the city itself, but it's representative of the entire Assyrian Empire. The Assyrian Empire, at the time after they took over Israel, it stretched all the way, it was all of what is today Syria, in through northern Iraq, a portion of Turkey, all the way down to Iran, and then it went over through what was now Lebanon, and then down through the northern part of Israel, and they had even taken some of the cities of Judah. Before then they had surrounded Jerusalem. So it was a very large empire. And what he's saying is, it's all gonna be completely destroyed and wiped off the face. And they were wicked. Remember in the past what I've told you about the Assyrians? I mean, they make the Nazis in World War II look like little kids, you know? I mean, they were the epitome of being cruel and wicked. And they're gonna get utterly destroyed. And then notice the language that's used there about Judah, about lifting up their oppression, and then the great verse there about on the mountains the feet of the one who brings good tidings, who proclaims peace. Have you ever heard that phrase before? Where have you heard that phrase before?
The New Testament talks about Jesus.
Yeah, talking about Jesus, yeah.
Angels at his birth.
Right. Proclaiming the good news, proclaiming peace. And so for some, they see that as being almost a prophecy about Christ. Now to others, they just said, no, what they're saying is, even though Assyria's beating you up, don't worry, they're gonna get theirs and you'll have your peace. There we go. Exactly what-
I
yep.
didn't even see.
Yep. That's why I always want to.
Oh, how are you? Okay, we thought you were.
Oh, okay.
Downstairs. Happy birthday, Peter.
All right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, hey, Mandy. Okay. So, they're gonna get wiped out. Judah's gonna have its rest. So now we have the coming of this chapter 2 deals with the judgment that's going to fall upon Nineveh with the Assyrian Empire. And let's just take a few of that verses. Would someone just read verses 3 through 10?
The shield of his soldiers are red. The warriors are clad in scarlet. The metal on the chariots flashes on the day they are made ready. The spears of pine are brandished. The chariots storm through the streets, rushing back and forth through the squares. They look like flaming torches. They dart about like lightning. He summons his picked troops, yet they stumble on their way. They dash to the city wall. The protective shield is put in place. The river gates are thrown open and the palace collapses. It is decreed that the city be exiled and carried away. Its slave girls moan like doves and beat upon their breasts. Nineveh is like a pool, and its water is draining away. Stop, stop, they cry, but no one turns back. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold. The supply is endless. The wealth from all its treasures she has pillaged, plundered, strips. Hearts melt, knees give way, bodies tremble, every face grows pale.
Wow. So that, just a portion of chapter 2 there, but it's describing this judgment come upon it. What do you make of that description?
They're going to be annihilated.
Yeah, how about that thing about the chariots racing back and forth?
Makes me think of, when they left, my words are not here.
When they left Egypt?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah,
That's my
okay.
words.
Well, with the Red Sea, with the chariots going after the Israelites and they chase them in the Red Sea. Well, and it's speaking to all this confusion that occurs in the midst of battle. These warriors, their shields are red. Why are their shields red? Blood. Right. That's why there's the crimson dripping and the chariots flashing back and forth. And when it says they rush to and fro through the squares, what does that mean? What squares are they talking about?
The town square?
Hey, you see this, and this is another thing where we think of like, okay, they must mean the town square. No, what they're talking about is in their military formations, they form squares. The chariots are supposed to be acting as a force on the side of the square for sweeping actions. So you got your square of soldiers that allowed 360 protection, and they would move forward, launching into battle, to press against an enemy, or if someone attacked them, there was no way to outflank them because they were in a square, all defending, and you'd have multiple squares, and the chariots were supposed to, but here the chariots in their confusion are sweeping through the middle of the squares, breaking them apart. The defenses are all falling. And he, notice that language there in verse 5, he calls their officers, but they stumble as they call forward. And so now they're hastening to the wall to give them protection, but everything falls apart. River gates are opening and stuff. And so even the slave women, who are the furthest back in the defense, it's basically everything else has to be before you finally get to them. They're beating, and notice the language about people, their faces being pale, and how what's become like a lion's den. So the attacker is going forward like a lion, just devouring people, and there's no escape for them. It's a very vivid description and imagery that's being painted here. Far different than Jonah just saying, oh, you're going to be destroyed in 40 days. And the interesting, historically, this is what happens. Babylon sweeps down, and even though this Nineveh is an incredibly defensive city, it is wiped off the planet all in the span of one day. There isn't even a long siege. Babylon one was able to come in and just sweep in and destroy it very, very quickly. So then we go into chapter 3, and we got Zephaniah to also cover, so I'm kind of going through this. So in chapter 3, what happens is he talks about the brutality and cruelty. So here's the judgment, here's what's coming, but now in chapter 3, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to say, hey, here's how bad and cruel Assyria is. And he gives the example of Thebes, which is Thebes is a Greek city. And they had ventured as far as that. And in that, we taught verse 8 there, are you better than Thebes that sat by the Nile and with water around her, rampant at sea, water well? Ethiopia was her strength, Egypt too, I'm sorry. Yeah, I said Greek and I didn't mean that, I meant Egypt. But Ethiopia was her strength, Egypt too, and that without limit. Put and the Libyans were her helpers. So the city of Thebes in Egypt had sought Ethiopia and the Libyans and everyone to defend them, but they fell and they collapsed and were destroyed. He's saying, are you better than that? The city you destroyed and laid waste to, and how she went into exile and everything like that? And basically, the answer is no, you're not better. And so he talks about this destruction that's going to have, and then going into verses 3:11 through 19, there is all this inevitable destruction that's going to occur upon them, and then how the nations all around them react to that. There's no assuaging, verse 19 in chapter 3. No assuaging your hurt, your wound is mortal. All who hear the news about you clap their hands over you. For who has escaped your endless cruelty? In other words, no, everyone's going to be happy that you're falling. No one's going to be sad about it. Okay, so that's Nahum. Any questions about Nahum? So now we go into Zephaniah. In Zephaniah, he's our bit of royalty here. Zephaniah is the great-grandson of King Hezekiah. And he is the only prophet in all the prophets. He's the only one that's actually descended from royalty. And he is being a prophet during the reign of King Josiah. Does anyone remember anything about King Josiah?
Wasn't he a child?
He was, the old child king.
And found the scrolls.
Yeah, he's the one that orders the rebuilding of the temple. He does good in the eyes of God and everything. He's trying to do the right stuff. He orders the rebuilding of the temple. And as they're rebuilding the temple, lo and behold, they discover the scriptures again. The law. Now, them discovering those scriptures, what does that mean? It means they were lost. They didn't have them.
That's a trick question.
Yeah, well, you see, but and that's something we forget too when we're reading this. That they literally went hundreds of years with no scriptures, and not even caring about it. Knowing that, there was something that, who cares? Whatever, we're not following it anyway. And then so they are found in his reign, and when they are read to him, his reaction is tearing his garment and renting it and going into mourning, because he realizes how far they have gone away from the scriptures. And so then he tries to institute it back. So understand, Zephaniah is prophesying during good times. Because during the reign of Josiah, you see what happens is Assyria has gotten destroyed by Babylon, beaten up, and Babylon's just in the midst of rising. So there's literally nothing, no one is trying to beat up on Judah. They are at peace. They got no problems. They got little minor skirmishes going on, but I mean, they're really small fry thing. They're prosperous economically. They've rebuilt things. They've rebuilt their infrastructure. It is good times. Things are going well. And that's when Zephaniah is going to be giving this prophecy, which is a judgment against them. And that's always a really interesting, a judgment coming against them, even though they're trying to do things right. Okay, so.
Were the people trying to do things right though?
Well, this is the part they get to, and you see in this. So, and it can kind of speak to us. Often we may think, oh, things are going well, good person in charge, and then we lose, a lot of times that's our greatest temptation, to lose our focus on God and really not have our heart towards God, but have it towards our prosperity. And that's what happens to Josiah later in his reign. He drifts away from God. And he starts thinking he has, and what happens to him? He dies in battle. He decides, I can go conquer them. Yeah, they're not bothering me, but let me go get them. And he goes out to get them, and it doesn't work. And he ends up dying. His arrogance kills him. And that's what happens here, is they get more arrogant, and so Zephaniah is speaking to this. Okay, so let's get into Zephaniah here, and would someone read in chapter 1 through let's see where verses 1 through 9. 1 through 9.
The word of the Lord came to Zephaniah, son of Cushi, the son of Gedethal, the son of Jeremiah, the son of Hezekiah, during the reign of Josiah, son of Amon, king of Judah. Judgment on the whole earth in the day of the Lord. I will sweep away everything from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. I will sweep away both man and beast. I will sweep away the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, and the idols that cause the wicked to stumble. When I destroy all mankind on the face of the earth, declares the Lord, I will stretch out my hand against Judah and against all who live in Jerusalem. I will destroy every remnant of Baal worship in this place, the very names of the adulterous priests, those who bow down on the roofs to worship the starry host, those who bow down and swear by the Lord, and who also swear by Moak, those who turn back from following the Lord, and neither seek the Lord nor inquire of him. Be silent before the sovereign Lord, for the day of the Lord is near. The Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated those he has invited. On the day of the Lord's sacrifice, I will punish the officials and the king's sons, and all those clad in foreign clothes. On that day, I will punish all who avoid stepping on the threshold, who fill the temple of their gods with violence and deceit.
All right. So, this prophecy, Zephaniah, is in cycles, and lots of the prophecies are in cycles. So it like completes a cycle and then goes through a same cycle, sometimes in a little more detail, and then we'll go through it again. So the very first cycle is right up front, verses 2 through 3. And in that cycle, you can compare that to Genesis chapter 1 in the creation. In Genesis chapter 1, when he's creating, here he is destroying. If you take a look at the order that it goes in, he talks about humans, which was the last things to be created, then the animals, the next thing to be created, then the birds of the air and the fish of the sea are next. And so it goes in this reverse order from Genesis. Now, what do you make of that? Because, okay, here we are sitting so much later, and we know God does not, during this time, wipe off everything off the face of the planet. But yet here it says, I will utterly sweep away everything from the face of the earth. What do you make of that?
Maybe that's still to come.
Okay? And so, in that view, say, yeah, there is gonna come the day when God's gonna wipe everything off the face of the planet. And there'll be coming then a new heaven and a new earth. So here he starts off talking about the ultimate judgment to come. And then he's gonna take a step back and in this next cycle, talk about the specific judgment coming about Judah. Other scholars look at it, and what it says is it's more kind of like the exaggeration for effect. So a lot of Jewish scholars and some Christian scholars would look at it and say, well, in the kind of figurative language of the time, it has the imagery that everything gets wiped off the face, but it's not literal.
Made me think about Noah and the ark. That's what it made me think of. But I'm not sure if he is before Noah.
No, this is way after Noah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're thousands of years after Noah here.
Get lost in all those
Yeah,
years.
yeah, I understand, but yeah, it does give the imagery. You think of Noah in the sense of, God says, I'm gonna wipe everything with that, off the face of the earth with a great flood, except for those that I bring in the ark and everything like that. But here, yeah, it's long after that. So now I would say more orthodox, more traditional, evangelical type scholars would say, yes, this first cycle is talking about the end times. And then he comes down because this is overall giving this judgment of God, and so he gives first this great sweeping thing, and then he's coming around talking about this judgment here now specific to Judah. And notice then how he goes into this judgment on Judah, and notice what's being taught. Cut off from every place the remnant of Baal. So even though Josiah, and we read in Kings about how Josiah brought back the scripture and brought back the sacrifices in the temple and doing what was said to be done, there is a remnant of Baal hanging out. And God's gonna wipe it off. And then he talks, and the idolatrous priests. priests that maybe are being priests in the temple, but at the same time are worshiping Baal, because he talks about being on the rooftops and praising. So they're out there in their heavens bowing, you know, and those who swear down things, but they also, so they swear to God, but then they're also swearing to this other God. And they've turned back from following the Lord and aren't really seeking God. And what do you make of verse 7 there? About the Lord prepared the sacrifice, he has consecrated his guest. The Lord has prepared a sacrifice, he has consecrated his guest.
Jesus' salvation?
Hmm?
Jesus' salvation?
Okay.
Might be
In what
talking,
way?
might be talking about the salvation of the world as far as the sacrifice of Jesus
The crucifixion.
and crucifixion.
Yeah, what does it mean to have it, you know, consecrated his guests?
The Lord knows his chosen. Like predestination, but we don't believe in predestination. Or do we? I can't remember. Somebody does.
Those Presbyterians.
Oh, okay, yeah, Presbyterians. Thank you.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, ones he has chosen, his guests, the ones that are aligned with him. And when Israel was God's chosen people, they were set aside, they were made holy. We as Christians, we are God's holy people. We're set aside. We're made holy. We got the Holy Spirit in us. We might not always obey the Holy Spirit, listen to it, but we got the Holy Spirit in us if we've accepted Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. And yeah, so here he's saying, okay, this destruction's happening, but I got my guests who are consecrated. They're made holy. They're set aside. There is a remnant that's going to happen out of the fall of Judah. Remember, it's not like Israel where everyone gets killed, except for a few stragglers that come down to Judah. There are those who get exiled to Babylon, his consecrated guests. They're set apart. Not everyone's gonna die. And so he uses this imagery that's really imagery of a wedding. You have a sacrifice for a wedding, and you have consecrated guests that are wearing now the wedding garments. And so he uses this type of image to lay this out, and how he's going to punish the official and the king's sons and all who dress themselves in foreign attire. In other words, who aren't in the wedding garment, but are dressing outside. Remember Jesus' parable about the wedding? What happens?
Is this the one with the wicks? With
So-
the oil in the wicks?
No,
is it
the
different?
guests come in,
Yeah.
and they're all given wedding garment, but then all of a sudden the master of the wedding sees someone without the wedding garment on, and that person gets cast out, and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so this is why he talks about their attire. They're not wearing the right thing. Their hearts are on these foreign gods, on these other things. They were dressed in this foreign attire. They aren't part of the wedding guests, so now vengeance is coming upon them. And so I'm gonna punish them. And there's these people who have filled his master's house, the temple, with violence and fraud. They say they're priests, but they ain't. They're not doing the right thing. Okay? And then in verse 10, when he says, on that day, says the Lord, a cry will be heard from the fish gate and a wail from the second quarter. What's the fish gate? Any thoughts?
The market where they go.
Each of the gates around Jerusalem on the wall, there's gates on the wall, and they each have names. Like Jesus, when he has his triumphant entry, comes through the sheep gate. And then you also had the thing called the fish gate. It was mainly dealing with the marketplace. That they literally fish swam through the gate. But that this was where market goods were brought into the marketplace. So it was one of the primary gates. It wasn't the main gate, but it was a major gate for all produce and things to come in because the marketplace was near and they could set up. And what's happening there? Oh, there's going to be a cry being heard because things are being destroyed. The commerce, the way of life is being destroyed in the city. And then he talks about the second quarter. What's the second quarter?
Second class people, bottom class people.
Yeah, so second quarter, so he talks about, you got the kings and the royal officials he's bringing judgment on, and now he's getting in the marketplace, related to the marketplace. These are all the business people. And so now things are coming upon them in this judgment. Okay, and that's, notice how the rest of those verses kind of go into that in Jerusalem about the traitors have perished, those who weigh silver are cut off. See now, so kings, royalty, business people now, we're kind of working our way down the feed chain. Okay, and it brings out, notice the phrase that keeps on getting repeated, and you hear it over and over in this chapter. The day of the Lord is near. On that day. And that is talking about the day of judgment. And when it's talking about the day of the Lord in this, you've got to keep it in context. It's not talking about when Christ will come again. It's talking about the judgment that's befalling them here and now. On that day, that day of the Lord. And if you keep in context that all this stuff from Zephaniah is happening, is being called about, while things are okay and prosperous. It doesn't seem to be any problems. You can almost imagine why it wasn't really listened to. And so the rest of chapter 1 there really goes into detail about this destruction working its way down. And it talks about, verse 17, bringing distress upon the people. They're going to walk around like blind people because they've sinned against the Lord. Their blood shall be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Yeah. pretty sight. And when it says in 18, neither their silver nor their gold will be able to save them, a thing that kings would often do is when someone would come to attack them, they would buy them off and hand them a bunch of silver or gold and says, okay, I'll be a vassal to you. Here you have my silver and gold. That's what happened to a king way before to Assyria. They tried to buy off Assyria. And he's saying, nope, that's not going to work anymore. So he has all that judgment. Then in chapter 2, notice he gets in there. Gather together, gather, O saintless nation, before you are driven away like drifting chaff. Before there comes upon you the fierce anger of the Lord. Before there comes upon you the day of the Lord's wrath. Seek the Lord, all you humble of the land, who do his command. Seek righteousness, seek humility. Perhaps you may be hidden on the day of the Lord's wrath. Wow. So then we get this call of repentance. This call of repentance comes in. You know, he's asking them to humble themselves and to seek God. And perhaps it will be okay. The rest of chapter 2 then goes into this judgment upon other nations, and it includes Philistia and Moab and Ammon and Cush and Assyria. Cush is what we call nowadays Ethiopia. And so there's judgments against all of them, too. Philistia is, you know, interestingly, that's what we would call Gaza today, and that little strip of land. And Moab and Ammon are kind of interesting because they get criticized there in verses, chapter 2, verses 8 through 11. They get criticized for their arrogance. I've heard the taunts of Moab and the revelings of the Ammonites, for they have taunted my people, and they made boast against their territory. And remember where the Moabites and the Ammonites come from? Lot. Yeah, Lot's daughters. They come from an incestuous relationship. Lot's daughters have sex with Lot. They get him drunk so they can get pregnant.
That was our lesson today, but I left that part out.
That's a good thing, yeah. I sometimes wonder about, I know, yeah, imagine that with little kindergarten kids. Yeah, let's go talk about that. I do sometimes wonder about Alana, yeah.
Culture.
But so, yeah, but, and then ironically here, they're being arrogant and boastful, despite their beginning and where they come from. And so now they got judgment coming upon them. And so, you know, he stresses, you know, that this is God's people and that the nations are messing with God's people. And 5 times in 3 verses in chapter 2, 8 through 10, he mentions the relationship with God. And it's bad enough to oppress another nation, but it's especially bad to do it to God's chosen people. And so then in the 3rd cycle, which is chapter 3, notice how these cycles are nicely broken down almost by chapters here for us, is a judgment now specifically on Jerusalem. And almost like before, where he went through the different groups, he goes through the groups again, and you got the officials and how they're all full of themselves and very arrogant, the rulers, how they're just being very indiscriminate and consuming everything, and the prophets are arrogant and giving false wisdom, and then the priests are really religious scolding God. They may be saying it, but they're not really in their heart doing it. And that the proof of this is going to be as judgment is befalling the other nations around them, like they're talking about. And that is what happens. And then, and so basically God here is giving Judah time to repent. He's saying, here's this prophecy. Yeah, things are all great right now, but it's going to take place, and the proof of it is going to be as you're watching the judgment befall these other nations all around you. And as you're seeing that happen, it should dawn to you that maybe you need to repent and come back to God for real in your heart, seeking that relationship. But he talks about how judgment's going to come, and there's only going to be this remnant left. And then at the very end, he talks about the restoration of that remnant. And the restoration is not only the exiles kind of returning from being exiled, but the restoration in the sense that we're going to see at the end times. And that becomes all of Zephaniah's prophecy. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Blink, anybody? Chris, Linda? No, yeah, okay. Thank you for always joining us. Next week is back. Yeah. Okay. Very good. I will see you all later then. Bye.
Much later. Where he's going, but I'm going home. I don't think I'll see you there.